Mayor, Councilmember Schroeder has a question or comment.
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Mayor, this is going back to the report on MPD and also on the Office of Violence Prevention. First of all, I want to thank you for including the Office of Violence and Prevention. I think my critique of previous reports is we hear all about just the problems about the violent crime. But unlike every other department in the city, we're not hearing how taxpayers' dollars are going towards solving that problem. So it's helpful to hear what the Office of Violence Prevention is doing to reduce violent crime, but it would also be helpful to hear, things like how many arrests have been made, how many open cases are being made, what leads are being made, just to hear, how taxpayer dollars are being used by MPD and how it's having an effect in the city.
Thank you, Madam President, Council Member Schroeder. So as I noted, this report and my obligation under the emergency declaration is to report specifically on COVID-19 related issues. Now, we have at times gone beyond that to try and provide additional information as much as possible. Obviously, there's been quite a lot going on these last couple days, and so our staff has been working incredibly hard to make sure that the city has been safe and protected. To provide some additional information, if you are in fact looking to that, year to date, and the Office of Violence Prevention I would put in that category as well. It's some additional information that we're trying to provide. We can't provide every last bit in a report that is simply delivered by me. Obviously, if there is additional information that you are looking for, I would strongly encourage you to have the experts in their particular area come and present at one of the committees. That would be the right area for receiving and actually digging into some of these substantial details rather than just have an overarching overview. To give you a little bit of additional information, year to date, the shooting victim total is up. It's the highest in the last 5 years with 347 victims. That's up 82%. 156 more victims compared to this time in 2019. A total of 29 victims of gunshot wounds in the past 2 weeks through Monday, August 24th. Arrest data over the last week is still being collected. As you can imagine, over the last couple of nights, there are some moving pieces that we're presently sorting through to get you finalized and accurate information.
Councilmember Schroeder, did you have a follow-up?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the cycle we keep coming into is that we keep talking about the statistics, and those are important for the public to know, but without the other part of hearing, what MPD is doing, what our officers are doing, what our taxpayer dollars are doing, it really doesn't tell the full story. And that's something I've been coming back to week after week. I'm certainly, of course, not asking, for something that is going to be hard on staff to present. I'm asking for the same level of detail that we're getting from every other department. If you can't get arrest data for the last week, and of course this week would be one of those weeks that there would be, of course, given an exception, going over the last couple weeks would be fine. It's just an idea to be public, to not just have me ask a question and get that back, but to have it on the public record so people can understand what is going on with MPD right now.
Madam President, Councilmember Schroeder, first, once again, I would point you back to the fact that this emergency declaration and our responsibilities under it are related to COVID-19 and the health pandemic, similar to how there is decorum in the City Council, where you don't just randomly ask other City Council members questions that they're required to answer. This is specifically related to COVID-19. I am happy to be as transparent with you as we possibly can. There's a lot of information, a lot of things that are presently happening in the city. And as I said last week and the week before, and I believe the week before that, we would be happy to provide additional information. What I would strongly suggest is that you have a resident expert from MPD, the chief or otherwise, present at a committee in full form where we can really dig into the details, provide the public, not just with a glance, but a full baked concept of what they're actually doing on the ground day to day. That is the information that you're looking for. In order to get that information, let's have it at a committee meeting where we can dig in long form rather than just touch along the edges to make a point. So
thanks, Mayor. It looks like Mr. Carl wants to make a statement. I will say that you have been including crime statistics updates in every report to the City Council. So if it's not appropriate for this venue, perhaps we should touch base about how to best communicate that information, because I think it's a little challenging for council members to hear that top line information without much context each week. We did have Chief Arredondo come to our POGO meeting, and he is going to do a study session on September 15th, and we're very grateful for him taking that time. And then Mr. Carl wanted to chime in. Mr. Carl.
Madam President, thank you. I simply wanted to state exactly what you did, in case Councilmember Schroeder or others weren't aware, that the intention of these weekly reports, of course, is stated as the COVID, with the presentation by Chief Arredondo at the last POGO committee meeting. There was a directive to come back with a study session, and at your request, Madam President, the clerk's office and our information technology department have been working very diligently with the police department to pull together a lot of the data that we've been listening that's been requested over the multiple weeks during these presentations. It was our intent to bring forward at that study session what we anticipate being more of a public accessible data dashboard that gets to the data that Councilmember Schroeder has been requesting, to make sure that that data is presented, to make sure it is in context, and to make sure that it is updated on a regular basis going forward. And I also have been in touch with the chief about having him appear at future committee meetings or study sessions as appropriate, in order to separately update the council on the issues of public safety and police department operations, so that those are in those proper venues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. Councilmember Schroeder.
Thank you, Madam President. And to be clear, and I appreciate the update from the clerk, I certainly welcome that information. But to be really clear, this is not supposed to be a very hard question. It's supposed to be a very basic question. I completely understand that these reports are suffering for our updates around the city's response to COVID-19. But what I'm hearing from every single constituent is that they're not just suffering, the trauma of dealing with COVID-19. They're still dealing with the trauma of the uprising, of the murder of George Floyd. All these things are happening at once. If the City Council is going to get an update, I think it is very helpful and transparent to all of our constituents to have those quick top line, 1,000-foot level update full stories of what is going on in the city and how they can feel safe, what is being done, and frankly, how they are being heard. So I'm not looking for the specific data that my requests seem to be being heard as. I am asking for very basic information that can help constituents understand what is going on with the city.
Madam President, Councilmember Schroeder, we are happy to provide those updates. On the one hand, last week you were asking for specific information, which I then followed up with an email to ask, and no additional specific information was provided. On the other hand, you want large presentations from the chief, which we are more than happy to provide. We want to give you as much in-depth information as possible, whether it was regarding arrests, which you originally requested, or whether it's regarding into what is happening in terms of policing. We're happy to provide the general. We're happy to provide the specific. We're happy to provide all of it. As we've stated week after week after week, it is most effective if that presentation can come in the form of a study session. I'm thankful that that study session is now moving forward. What would be even more helpful is if you had additional specific questions that we could have them asked ahead of time, so we can make sure that the chief is prepared to answer every single one of them. We want to get the information out. It's necessary that we all do our due diligence and our homework in making sure that that information is projected ahead of time so that we can get the right information to you.
Mr. Mayor, I don't mean to belabor this point, but just to address some of the points you're making, I just don't think this is helpful to go back and forth of I didn't ask specific questions or enough. I've asked specific questions. I have not gotten answers. I can giving examples like the email you sent back said it was a very basic question and then didn't proceed to answer that. I'll follow up with the chief. I have specific questions. I thought that it was great that to see him in committee. But even then, I had questions that I had heard specifically from a precinct inspector that completely contradicted what the police chief was saying. And so I followed up on that. I still haven't gotten answers, but I will continue to do that. I'll follow up with the chief on those specific questions.
Thank you, council member. And we'd be happy to provide the email verification of all of it. Very general question, got a very general response. We want to provide you the information once again. I think the right place to do it is the study session. And so I'm very glad that the council is moving forward with that. That would be the right venue to answer these questions. We want to get you all the information. If you have specific questions, please ask them. We will answer them. If you have general questions, please ask them and we will answer those as well.